Thank you very much. Uh, First of all, I want uh, to say that yesterday my hometown in Syria was attacked by ISIS groups, and more than 260 persons were killed by these attacks. And the situation is still very bad there, and I'm sorry because I couldn't sleep yesterday at all, so I'm very tired. I'm so sorry. God bless this city and God bless Syria as well. Actually, immigration situation for the Syrian people is very complex situation, and after 7 years after the Syrian revolution, we have to know that this year witnessed that more than 920,000 persons were forced to leave their own homes because of the attacks and the battles led by the Syrian regime and the Russian forces to many places and cities in Syria. And those people have no options, and they forced or to be killed under the bombing, or they must to live in the open areas without any kind of help. And they gathering in the border with Jordan, and they gathering as well with the border with occupied Julan in the south of Syria without any kind of help. Actually, the difference between what's going on this year and what happened in 2015 is that the Europe has closed its borders, and as well the four countries, the neighboring countries, Turkey and Lebanon, Jordan, and Iraq as well closed its borders in the face of refugee. And this because we don't feel any new migration toward Europe as what happened in 2015. Actually, the United Nations recorded in general, if I want to speak about the migration in Syria in general, the United Nations recorded nearly 6.6 million people were recorded as refugee inside Syria, and 5.6 million were forced to flee in the neighboring country like Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan, and Iraq as well. Turkey, as example, there are 3.3 million people living in Turkey. The majority of them living in the cities, but there are about 8% living in camps. In Lebanon, there are about 1 million Syrian refugees living in a very hard situation, in a very bad situation, in many camps, and they're facing lackness in many services like water, food, and other services. In Jordan, there are 700 Syrian refugees living in Jordan, about 1,050 Syrian refugees living in two camps, Zatari and Al-Azraq, and they're facing a very, very bad situation. In Iraq as well, there are about 250,000 Syrians living in Kurdistan and Iraq and some other points in other areas, and as well they're facing a very hard situation in Egypt as well. The UNHCR offering some help to nearly 1,030,000 Syrian in many cities in Egypt. Actually, in March 2016, as you know, the Balkan route was closed, and this way was witnessed about 1,200,000 Syrians came through this way to Europe. The majority of them are here in Germany, in Austria, or in Sweden, or other countries. And since that, thousands of Syrian refugees stuck in two countries, Greece and in Serbia as well, and they don't have any options. Some of them go back to Turkey, and some of them they don't want to go back, and the majority of them they don't have any possibility to go to go on in their street to the north. Since March 2016, a desperate attempt to reach Europe by rubber boats and fishing boats through Africa continue every year, and new routes to death, from West Africa to Spanish Canary Islands, from Morocco to southern Spain, from Libya to Malta, and to the Italian islands Sicily and Lampedusa, as well from Turkey to Greece and Romania, as there are refugees trying to pass through Europe and Ukraine, sometimes without passports and others with fake or stolen passports. I just want to move because I think too much time, so I will move to speak about the integration and the situation for the Syrian refugee in Germany. According to the Federal Statistic Office in Germany, there are 700 Syrians living in Germany who don't have German citizenship. Integration situation is not the same for those, according to many things, as example, to the age, culture, and social background, and religious background as well. In Berlin, for example, many Syrian refugees prefer to choose their flats in Sonnenallee area, an Arab majority area. This is very serious that they will be soon or later part of these almost closed communities. But this has become less common in the light of the very bad housing crisis in Berlin. One of the more prominent features of migration in Germany in the last 3 years, by my opinion, was that it didn't form an isolated societies. The growing fears of extremism, terrorism, and Islamophobia led many Muslim refugees to show more openness to the German society as a reaction to the rise of the right-wing parties. Of course, the culture of welcome still exists today. If we want to speak about the welcome culture, it still exists. It has declined compared to the years 2015 and 2016 because of many terrorist accidents or attacks happened not just in Germany but in the other European countries, and because of the harassment accident happened. All of you have heard about the harassment accident happened in Cologne and other cities, and because of the rape accident, it's very few accidents, but its voice is very loud. So many of the Muslims trying to show more openness to the German society after this accident. Certainly, it's not expected that those people who supported the refugee, I was witness for the first days when the Syrian refugee or the Iraqis or the Afghanis refugee came to Berlin. I remember that thousands of Germans came at once and they started offering them a lot of help. And there are hundreds of demonstrations came every month and they say welcome to refugees. Personally, I don't think that those people, they will turn off and to stay in the next direction and to say refugee go out. But for those who were a little bit not so keen for the refugee, or they were a little bit in the neutral side, I'm afraid there are many of them will turn to be in the other side, and maybe they will be parts or take parts in the rights political parties like AfD. Actually, many Syrians who came to Germany in the past I mean, in the last 2 decades or 3 decades, thinks that integration now in Germany is more easier because this welcome cultural. They say they think that this welcome culture is not exist upon in 2000 or 1990 or in these decades. But with this, there is still a lot of difficulties in the face of the refugees. Uh, as example, the language learning. It's very difficult, especially for those people who are in the middle age, and they facing a lot of trouble with their own homes, and they thinking all the time about what's going on in their homes, so they are not able to learn language as fast as the young. So it's really very hard problem, or we can say it's the main problem, because the linguistic integration is very important for everybody. Every one of us knows that there is no way to have a job without speaking German language. So many Syrians thinking that their stay in Germany is temporary. They will not stay forever here, especially for those people who are 14 or 40 or 50 years old. They thinking all the time that they waiting the right moment to go back, but actually the situation now going in a very, very bad way. So this hope is going to increase day by day. I want to give you some examples about some people who are thinking that they don't want to be integrated. As example, Hani is a 60 years old Syrian refugee who is waiting for the right moment to go back to Syria. He says, I don't want to be integrated, and it's not fair to force me to learn German. The international law gives me the right to be protected. Many Syrians, in the other direction, many Syrians feel desperate to be separated from their families because the secondary protection doesn't give them the right to bring their families together. They are saying that we prefer to die together than to live separated. Many try to bring their families illegally because of the failure of the coalition government in this site. This has created so-called contrary immigration. Many people who are desperate now that they can get their families here together in Germany, they start thinking to go back. But many people who are wanted by the Syrian regime, they can't go back to Syria. Not just for the political situation or for their own political situation, but for the situation in general in Syria. For those who has families in Turkey, I have met one person who wants to go back, but unfortunately the Turkey government don't offer them a visa to go back. So they are trying to go back the same way they come through, and they finding now smugglers. They paying them money and just trying to go back to Turkey, and they are totally disappointed. They don't want to stay here alone, and they want to go back. Doesn't matter what they will face, but they don't want to be alone for 3 or 4 years. Amir Bernier, as example, 54 years, has been living for 3 years with his wife and 2 children in a camp. He says, I didn't recommend any of my relatives or friends to come to Germany because of the bad conditions in Germany. Actually, there are a lot of camps with very bad conditions. There are people who still living in a very narrow rooms or share it with other families. There is no privacy. There is nothing they can do, and they don't have any options to go on to find a flat or to find an apartment to stay alone or to feel with their own dignity. And this is very important thing, that Syrians living in this, or other refugees, not just Syrians, to live in this open atmosphere. If you want to say that house or apartment in Syria is a very important thing. Syrians thinking, the first thing thinking with is if they have to offer their independent flat, but when they can't find it here, so it's very hard problem. So these bad conditions pushing a lot of refugees to send messages to the Syrians or those who are thinking of coming to Germany, that hey, don't come to Germany. It's very bad situation. You will not be able to find a flat, and this is very very bad. Related the language, it's very bad. So it's really a lot of people sending this kind of message to say to the other people, don't come to Germany. It's not the land of salvation. After last month Brussels meeting on asylum policy in Europe, many refugees have begun to think that access to Europe is not an aim itself. They are thinking of the privilege that they can get if they arrive, which means if they couldn't arrive in Scandinavian countries or Germany or Austria, their arrival in Greece, Italy or Spain will not give them any of the privilege that they dream with. The last meeting last month, they decide that Dublin Agreement will be applied absolutely. If you go to Greece or Italy or Spain, you have to go back to it. So there is no hope to anyone who come lately to Germany to stay in Germany or to stay in Netherlands, or they have to go back. So on these three countries and other countries, they don't offer refugees any kind of like hard sphere, or they don't give them any guarantees or any support. So if they paid money to the smugglers or to the way, they will lose it, and they will find very bad conditions in Greece or in Italy or in Spain, and absolutely the majority of them will go back to Syria. I also want to mention a very important, maybe I'm choosing something from here and there because time is not so not enough to discuss, to go more in the details. I also want to mention a very important point, which is the rise of the divorce rates among Syrian refugees, which is a very complicated matter, and it needs to be studied in the light of its effect on the integration process to the refugee families. If you go to the German mass media, you will notice all the time that there are increasing accidents like violence against women, divorces, sometimes killing or kidnapping the kids, and just because the woman wants to be separated or to get divorced. And this is very bad because a lot of families were separated now, and many women now, they are in the process. I have a wide connection with the camps and with the lawyers, and too much women thinking seriously that they have to get divorced. And this is very sensitive because we have to think what is the reasons behind this increasing rates, which is connected to the situation in Syria, to the religion background, and the situation of economic independence, that women now feeling that there are a low protection, they have full rights, and they have salaries, they don't depend on their men all the time, and now they have the decision. And there are a lot of NGOs or associations created by refugees which working on the topic, and there are real change happened among the Syrian families. the majority of this progress is good because women now is more independent. They can think personally about their own life, their own skills, but unfortunately some of it's very bad because it's affect the life of the children, and this is will affect the situation of integration as well. Actually, maybe you have heard about in the last few weeks there are some refugees go back from Lebanon and Jordan to Syria. About 13,000 Syrian refugees went back. And if we want to think why they go back, because the situation in Jordan and Lebanon is very miserable. And they can't go because they can't stay anymore. They don't have money, they don't have health care, they don't have any hope to find jobs, and there are a cultural of not welcoming them. If you want to go to the mass media in these two countries, you will see every day and articles or a lot of journalists or sometimes an official policy that we have to send this refugee back to their home. As well, there are speech that the Russian plan to bring back 1,700,000 Syrian to the Syrian land, to camps inside Syria, and they sent some papers to the UN and the American authorities that you are planning to send those people back. But the question now is where they will be sent, these people, to their destroyed homes, destroyed flats, or their very bad destroyed villages and cities. It's fake. They will not send. They are not able to send this huge number to Syria. They just trying to make a political game with this. The situation in Syria is very bad. The last numbers for the UN says that in the beginning of 2018, the rebuilding of Syria needs $400 trillion, and that was before the attacks in Al-Ghouta and in Dar'a. And I'm sure that the cost of rebuilding now is double. It's more than 600 or 700 trillion. And the problem is there is no guarantees. The same scenario happened in Dar'a last month will happen in Idlib, this city which is still under the control of the opposition in the north of Syria at the border with Turkey. There are 3 million persons living in this town, and now there is preparation from the Syrian regime and the Russian forces to attack the city. If that happened, God forbid, this means a disaster, real catastrophe will happen, because there are more than 3 million people, poor people, will be bombed all the time, and they will find their ways to out borders, to Turkey or to Europe maybe, and this will be real catastrophe if it's happened. Actually, the real reason of the refugee crisis still exists. The war in Syria has calmed down a little bit in some areas, but it's still going on in a very bad way in other cities, in other areas. The war has been stalled in many cities, but the lack of confidence in a political transition, according to Geneva process, will create a refugee crisis in the close future, and Syria will continue as a major sending country of refugees such as Nigeria, Iran, and Iraq. Actually, that's all for me. If I can answer some questions or something else, so I'm ready.
Yeah, thank you very much. My question is, as a journalist, like we know how much Islam is diverse and how much it changes from civilization, from culture to culture and from country to country, and how much anyway inside it there are many other religious groups and it has different view on how to deal with Islam itself and the relation with God, but also with the others in terms of religions. Also putting in mind that you talked about the attacks that happened in Europe and the harassment that happened in Cologne, although there was no direct connection to the Syrian immigrants whatsoever with all the attacks that happened so far. How much, as a journalist and also as a Syrian intellect, do you think our role in the term of creating a new dialogue about the diversity of being Muslim? It's not an ipso facto that you are a Muslim, that you are connected to the Islam that is doing the terrorist attacks, because a lot of the Syrians, you talked about them fleeing because of the oppression of the regime and thing, which is also true, but also it's because of ISIS and other Islamist fundamentals and terrorists that also attacked, and what's happening unfortunately in Sweden. Your city at this moment is this, like we have lost more than 100 to 50, and the numbers are increasing unfortunately of this because of the attack of ISIS. Me personally, I came from Raqqa, the capital of ISIS, for a specific time, and as a moderate Muslim and as an actually liberal Muslim, if I can say, I sometimes been faced with the Islam in that way, and I say, but I was a victim of that fundamental Islam. And Islam doesn't mean by ipso facto these people, because they are the Sikh, the pervert way of Islam. And I think we academics, journalists, whether we are coming from an Islamic background or not, really, it's time to create a speech to educate and also to open the German and the others about this diversity.
Yes, I agree with you. I think there are many efforts just to explain the point of view of this situation. But to be honest, we don't have enough platforms to address the opinion, the general opinion in Germany. If you want to say that, we have to make a campaign. We tried, and many other people trying to offering this kind of speech, that there are diversity in Syria and Islam is innocent of these acts. But actually, many refugees now that they say that it's not my own business. They don't realize that there are no good refugee and bad refugees. All of us in one package, in the same package. And many of refugees now trying to say it's not my own business, and this is very hard. Actually, we need real platforms to address the European audience, to say that Islam is not the cause. But actually, this is not related to an article or a research. It's a very huge effort. We need real awareness in on the level of government. It's not enough to write an article. I'm writing a lot of articles for German mass media, Süddeutsche Zeitung and Handelsblatt, and trying to explain my opinion and to say that this is not the real situation. But this is not enough. If you want to say that one harassment accident will be the speech of everybody, but a lot of good things did by refugee will not be the topic of the German. It's very complex situation, I think. Yes.
Okay, so one more question.
Yeah, you were saying earlier that a lot of the refugees that move out of the transitional housing are moving into the dominantly Arabic neighborhoods.
Yes.
What kind of information are you basing that on? Like, is it first-hand information that you have from people, or does it come from the camps, or where do you have that information from?
Actually, there are a lot of NGOs or associations who are working in the land with them, and I have a good connection with them personally. And there are a lot of platforms or websites which telling about their own lives, but the main information coming from me, from my colleagues who are allowed to work with them in Turkey and Lebanon, and the social media is very clear. If you want to go through this Arabic social media and you will listen to their stories, you can know about the details, the daily life of them, which is in general very, very bad.